Hello, hello, hello. I've absolutely no idea if anyone can hear us, so let us know in the chat section if you can. I can see your comments coming through now on the side there. I'm not going to start singing. Who's asking us to sing? Paul, I'm not going to start singing to you. Honestly, I don't get paid enough for that sort of thing. You're going to have to up your donations. No, I'm trying to test this out. I'm testing out this live stream stuff. Try and get it right. Because I think it's definitely worth doing. And it just allows me to actually take questions from all of yous. And actually hear what it is that you want to ask us, as opposed to me just pumping out content willy-nilly and being completely unable or unaware of what you'd actually like to talk about. So fire away with some questions, whatever takes your fancy, and I'll try and answer some of them. I'm just extending that chat thing there. There we are. All yous are saying now is I can hear you. Yes, I've established that you can hear us now. Did you see the picture I posted? I posted it on Facebook and on Twitter from the President of the EU Commission. Now, I don't know if you all remember, I'm sure you do, BBC Breakfast, where the presenters of BBC Breakfast were sneering and laughing at the Secretary of State for Housing, Robert Jenrick, because he was flying the flag and he had a portrait of Her Majesty the Queen behind him. And I've just seen the EU Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, and she has uploaded a picture of herself to her social media accounts with a EU mask on, an EU muzzle, and where she's had the vaccine, she's got a plaster on. And this plaster is an EU flag. Now, I'm waiting patiently for those same types who accuse the Secretary of State of being and I don't really want to use this word, flag shagger, for flying our flag, the national flag of our country, for putting behind him a picture of Her Majesty the Queen, our monarch, our head of state. Where are the same people criticising this use of the EU's flag, which isn't, by the way, even a national flag? The EU might pretend it's a state, but it's not. And gone are the pretense that we used to hear, folks, back when, in 2016, I heard it time and time again. The EU has no ambition or aspiration of statehood. It's a sort of club of nations based around trade and cooperation. Yeah, right, pull the other one. Pull the other one. And I think that's been unmasked as the ultimate fraud. I really, really do. Let us know what you think of that, of course. It's... So she's from the EU. The flag could have been bigger, a lot of yous are saying. How big do you want the flag? This one here, a lot of yous ask me what this is. And so this is the UK flag, obviously, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. And that's for Kanzuk, the proposed treaty of which actually is based around trade and cooperation. It doesn't just pretend it like the EU does. It would actually be based around trade and cooperation with 4 like-minded nations who have done much good for the world, getting together and deepening their relationships. And I think that's an incredibly important alliance moving forward, especially if we want to challenge the likes of China and all the rest of it. I think it's a really important one. So I got this from a mate of mine and I proudly have it behind me every single day. That and Mrs. Thatcher. And that there is the EU Withdrawal Act, signed by the Secretary of State at the time, David Davis. That, of course, is the recent, I don't know what you'd call it, gravestone. That's a vote leave mug. And that's my grandfather. That's just friends. God knows what that is. I was about to swear there. I won't do that. Someone, William Hill, says, the Queenie's not my monarch. I'm a Republican. Well, bully for you, William Hill. I assume you're not the betting shop. Well, Trevor says here, we couldn't care less about what they do in the EU. It's a little club we are no longer a member of. Well, that's true. That is very, very true. But I wasn't saying it because I care what they get up to. Although ultimately, you know, what happens on our doorstep, the EU is still very much on our doorstep, does impact us. So what they get up to matters. But in the sense of don't care if they want to wave their flag and stuff. I agree with you on that. But let's be clear about this. Let's be real. The hypocrisy, I think, is palpable. It's so obvious. It's so clear. In that the same people who shouted and screamed at the Housing Secretary flying our national flag have got absolutely nought to say when it comes to the EU lot flying their flag. Why is it that they despise with such vehemence our national flag and our flying of our national flag, our pride in those symbols of nationhood and the state? The two ultimate ones, of course, being the monarch, the crown, and the Union Jack, the Union flag. And they cringe. They've got such internal hatred for this symbol, for our national symbols. And they don't feel the same way about the EU flag. So they'll call the likes of, and there'll be many of my followers who feel exactly the same as me, they'll accuse us of being flag shaggers, of being, I don't know, swivel-eyed nationalists. And yet when the EU side do it, it's an abomination. When the United States of America does it, you can't go anywhere in the United States of America without passing a United States of America flag, without seeing that flag proudly fly. And yet in this country, there's this sort of national cringe. It's widespread. And I've never understood it. Absolutely never understood it. So that's why I care about this EU mask and plaster phenomenon. Because I think it just shows up those who criticise the likes of me for flying that flag there. Julie in Germany says that she's got a Union Jack in her garden. Good for you, pet. Of course, we still want to be friends and buy and sell things to Germany and all the rest of it, so God bless you. Vincent's from Ulster. That's a really interesting point. And forgive me, I'm not going to try and pronounce your name. Forgive my ignorance. But I've just been asked a question here by, I assume, someone from Poland. Have I got that right? Or Hungary. I'm sorry, I'm being really ignorant. But the question asks, what's the future? Do you see any positives? As an immigrant, I was more proud about the Union Jack than the rest of Londoners. And I actually think that there's a sort of really interesting point there. There is, isn't there, in the cities, in the cities that are occupied by students, by primarily Labour voting parts of the country, that do internally just cringe at our flag. And you don't see that in anywhere near the same way in places like this in County Durham, where you can go from, 2 minutes down the road, 2 minutes up the road, and you will see a Union Jack. You'll be lucky to see a single one in London. You know, you'd have to go to some government building. Even the BBC on the top of Broadcasting House flies a flag. But you'll you see precious few. And it's true that there is a hell of a lot more patriotism outside of the cities than there is within these towns and these villages up and down the country. And I think it's because there's this metropolitan view that the flag is something to cringe at. It's something not to be proud of. That Britishness isn't something that you should be proud of. It's an accident of birth, a horrendous accident of birth. There's genuinely this idea that this country is some racist backwater. That's why, folks. That's exactly why. When that report, the Soul report, came out, and we were all met with a torrent of abuse saying, this report is wrong, or this report has been, I don't know, whitewashed. Of course there's institutional racism in this country. You had Lisa Nandy of the Labour Party saying that would be an extraordinary finding, to find that the UK isn't institutionally racist. And you just think, why? Why can you not find anything good about this country? Why do you have such sort of self-loathing about your own country? It's bizarre, and I think people in places like this just don't understand that. And my lovely friend here from Poland, who says he feels pride in flying the Union Jack. And that's because of what the Union Jack represents around the world. Those are the values that people like my grandfather fought for. My granddad served in 1952 in the Korean War, fighting against communist tyranny, fighting to uphold democracy, freedom and liberty. The Union Jack represents that internationally, globally, around the globe. And yet in this country, there is a class that finds it completely unconscionable to support and fly that flag. It's utterly deranged. Let us know what you think. I'm interested. Graham says that the Union flag is a flag of unity. I completely agree. And the unity point is a really good one. And I'll tell you why. This is why I think it should be flown on school buildings, on government, any taxpayer-funded building should absolutely, I think, fly the Union Jack. And it's because it is that symbol of unity. If you look at this country over the past week, since sadly I think the passing of the late and great Duke of Edinburgh, God rest his soul, may he rest in peace and rise in glory, but you look at the response, and for the most part there's been a shared sense of grief. There's been a shared unity, that it has been a unity behind this one figure who was seen as the granddad of the nation, and a unifying figure that united we're all in that grief, in the idea that we'd lost this generation, this selfless generation that has done so much for us, not only here but around the world. Let's not forget that the Duke of Edinburgh fought in World War II. We've lost that generation, that selfless generation. And I don't think we'll ever know a generation like it in my lifetime. And look at the unity behind that. The outpouring of grief. And I think that tells us that despite the media narrative over the past, I'd say 5 years even, when was 2016? 5 years ago. Since then, we've been told time and time again that this was a disunited kingdom, that we were a failed state, essentially, that we needed the European Union to act as an adhesive to keep this country together. And I think to hell with that. And I obviously did, because I campaigned for Brexit. And I think over the past week we've proven that wrong. Because apart from a few tweets and a few idiots writing columns in some left-wing publication, which I won't even give the pleasure of naming on this broadcast tonight, we were united behind support for our monarch, for those symbols of nationhood. And our monarch, Her Majesty the Queen, is a symbol of our nationhood. And that, to me, folks, says that we're a hell of a lot more united than a lot of people give us credit for. So I am optimistic about the future. Fly that flag with pride, I say. And you can call me a flag shagger all you want. It's a ridiculous insult, isn't it? Whilst, of course, they fly their Black Lives Matter fists, their communist symbols, their pride flags and LGBT, A, B, C, D, whatever the alphabet spaghetti it is these days. They fly every flag but our own. And that's not symbols of unity. I fly the Union flag because I know no matter what your background, no matter what your sexuality, no matter what the colour of your skin, you at the end of the day are British. You share in those values. That's why we fly that flag. That's why I fly that flag with pride. That's why my granddad flew that flag with pride. And that's why, God forbid, if I ever have kids, they will be flying that flag with pride. Stranger things have happened, folks. Stranger things have happened. Right, Howie, I'm looking at your questions now. Well, Leon asks why I make fun of the LGBT, but I'm part of the community. What community is this? I don't understand. I am a bloke that likes men. That's got absolutely nothing to do with who I am as a human being. It's got absolutely nothing to do with my politics. It's got absolutely nothing to do with my everyday relationships beyond the obvious, that I'm exclusively attracted to men, the same sex. Apart from all of that, the community I belong to is this one here in County Durham. The community I belong to is my identity as a citizen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. That's what I belong to. I think it's ridiculous to try and put people in these individual groups, these boxes, identities to tick. No, thank you. My identity is British. That's it. Thank you very much, Roy. Also, Sheila says Lawrence Fox for mayor. Now, I don't live in London anymore, so I can't vote, obviously. But I think Lawrence is doing a fantastic job. I really do. And you can see in the response to Lawrence in London that he's riling people up. All the right people. I think actually Sadiq Khan dismissed him as being right-wing somewhere. So he said... no, it wasn't Sadiq Khan. It was a spokesman for Mr. Khan on debating Lawrence Fox. And he said, Sadiq will not engage with politicians on the extreme far right. And it's this ridiculous dismissal of those who actually quite like the country, of those who don't think it's institutionally racist, of those who actually want to look at the data, not the dates, of those who aren't absolutely terrified to leave their own home, who actually believe in freedom and liberty, democracy, and all these other things. Lawrence Fox is not right-wing. Lawrence Fox is someone who I believe actually even voted Remain. He has voted for left-wing parties in the past. He identifies as a liberal. He believes in free speech. All of these things do not make you left or right-wing. So that to try and sort of stereotype him and just throw him into this box and dismiss him like that, I think actually shows something quite interesting about Sadiq Khan and his team. I think that spokesperson has shown that they are actually quite worried about the sort of impact that Lawrence is having on drumming up support for these causes. Very, very interesting, folks, if you ask me. Sheila says, I've got a lot of respect for you, Darren. That's very kind, pet. Thank you very much. Julie asks, where's Diane Abbott lately? She made me laugh with her maths. Yes, God bless her. I mean, she's having quite the time, isn't she, over recent years? I wonder if she's found that odd shoe. Christina says she's voting for Lawrence. Connor says they label us far right to avoid debate. I think that's right, you know. I think that's right. They did this throughout the Brexit debate because they didn't want to have the argument. It's completely right. Vishal says that Britain is not a racist country. And you're right. Absolutely right. I don't think it is at all. I really don't. In fact, I often say this, you know, whenever that charge is presented, whenever people say, oh, you know, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is a racist country, I say, well, go on then. Name me another country across the world that enjoys fantastic race relations like this one. And they look blankly, blink a few times, and then try and move the question on. And you're like, well, there you are then. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. That's an interesting question from Carl Rogers. Should calling someone a racist or fascist be considered slander? I am a member of the Free Speech Union. They've got me out of a scrape with the Metropolitan Police last year over threatening to arrest me for an interview, or for comments that a guest said on my show, which was extraordinary. But the Free Speech Union helped get me through it, so they were fantastic. But should it be slander if you're called a fascist or a racist? Lawrence Fox actually got him, speaking of him again, he got himself in some hot water when he replied to some of these people saying that racist or something along those lines anyway. And he took them to task for doing so. But I honestly just think, folks, if someone is trying to do that to you, if someone's trying to silence you by calling you something that is palpable nonsense, by calling you something which I think is easily disproved, then that's a sign. There's that Thatcher quote of, you know, something along, and I paraphrase, I'm not getting this completely right verbatim, certainly not. If they attack you personally, it means they've not got a single political argument left. And I think that rings true. So if they start saying, oh, you're racist, you're all these other things, and they can't attack or they can't argue with you about the political argument that you're making, it's a sign that they have actually lost the argument. It's, I think, a line that rings true today. Yes, so Joy says it seems calling someone racist is the line people use when they haven't anything useful to say. I think that's absolutely right. I think there's no useful contribution that's ever come from someone that does do that. Yeah, so comment on YouTube here says that people should get behind the Free Speech Union. I completely agree. I think it's so necessary. I was at the launch of it in February last year. I don't know why I'm looking at the calendar. February last year, with Trevor Phillips, Toby Young, of course, Douglas Murray, and a few others. And it's so essential. Absolutely so essential. Because, let's be honest about this, the vultures of cancel culture are circling above the heads of all of those who dare, I think, speak against orthodoxy and against perceived wisdom and just spout common sense views. And it's starting to feed through to people with quote unquote ordinary lives and jobs. And that's when it starts to become really serious. I think we do have a free speech crisis in this country. So I think it's so important that people do support outfits like the Free Speech Union to ensure, one, that you are protected yourself. You've got someone that'll fight your corner if you end up in being a victim of cancel culture. I hate using that word, victim. And secondly, that you actually support others. If you yourself aren't likely to end up in that scenario, you support others who would be. Because I think free speech is a really important thing to stand up for. Really important. I'm just reading your comments. So Litza says on Facebook, don't just vote for Lawrence Fox, vote for Sean Bailey too. I'm not going to tell anyone how to vote, but the mayoral elections, just for those outside of London, you're allowed 2 votes in London. So that's an interesting one. I don't have a vote though, so vote however you want. That's an interesting point here. Mike Lane says that schools on YouTube. Hello, Mike. He says schools and universities are to blame for all this wokeness. Teachers should not be allowed to teach or preach political views in the education system. This is where the main problem stems from. What do I think about that? I think you're right. There's been a sort of march through the institutions, hasn't there? Where the left have certainly, I think, clearly got the upper hand as far as passing on left-wing views to the next generation. But I'm not sure it's isolated to schools. I'm not sure it's isolated to academia. I think you could turn on, certainly the BBC, but you could turn on Netflix, you could turn on Disney, you could turn on Amazon Prime, and much of the content that you'll be met by will have left-wing, liberal biases. Because the cultural, can't say that word, and media class, not just in this country, but I think across much of the West, do see things like nationhood as being embarrassing, do see things as self-ID for those who identify as being the opposite sex. So you can, if you believe that you are the opposite sex, just saying so makes it so. which actually I think has severe consequences for sex-segregated spaces, for single-sex spaces. And if sex doesn't exist, not only do sex-segregated spaces not exist, but same-sex attraction doesn't exist. Being gay doesn't exist. Words have meaning. So all of these things start to eat through. But I don't think it's isolated to our schools. I think we've got a real problem. The right in this country and across the West isn't fighting on a level playing field. Far from it. Far from it. So there we are. That wasn't very cheery though, was it? Ask us some questions where I can give you some cheer. I promise I'll try. Well, Julianne says you should go on the Jeremy Vine show. You're good. I like Jeremy Vine, but I'm not sure Jeremy Vine will have me on his show. Maybe I'm too controversial or something. I've never been invited on his show, so you'll have to put in a good word for us, Julie, if you're a regular watcher of it. I like him. He seems like a nice enough man. I mean, I'm not mad about his sort of obsession with cycling, and he seems to want to get every motor car off of the roads these days, but apart from that, I think he seems a canny enough bloke. Ragnar says, would you stand for political office, Darren? No, I wouldn't actually. This is going to make me sound quite, well, I don't think it is selfish. We'll see what you have to say about this one. When I went through my case against the Electoral Commission, and I became a sort of poster boy for that Brexit vote, and a source of a lot of abuse, sometimes virulently homophobic, and advocating that I get raped in prison and stuff like that. And the press turned up to my family home in County Durham and started pestering my little brother and my mother. And that was the first time throughout that entire 4-year ordeal that I just broke down in tears. So were I to be a political candidate, or were I to be, God forbid, anyone would have us like, but, you know, elected, I think the intrusion over your life would just be unbearable. I think actually I've got a lot to say about politicians and the lack of courage of much across many of them. But I think it requires real grit, determination, and I think the abolition of any sense or semblance of privacy in your life. So that's where I do have a bit of sympathy for politicians. I don't think it is a very nice life anymore. I'd quite like the salary. Does that answer your question? Hopefully. Joy Taylor on Facebook says that she used to be afraid to speak freely in case she was deemed to be offending someone, even though what she says is common sense in her own view. I do speak now, she says, because the majority have been silenced for far too long. And I think that's right, Joy. I think the problem that we face at the minute is that there's a bravery deficit in this country. I think there's a real problem as far as actually standing up for the values that you believe in are concerned and just thinking, well, someone else will do it. I don't need to. When actually I think things in this country are getting so bad as far as a clampdown on speech, clampdown on debate, whether that be on climate change, whether that be on the idea that this country is institutionally racist. There are attacks on people for holding these, what I would deem to be common sense views and opinions every single day now. I can't remember how many times people have tried to cancel me now as well. And you just think, why is that? Why do these people have so much power? And it's because ordinary people who have common sense views, like yourself, just think, well, this isn't my problem. I think it very soon will be, though. And that's why I say we need to be braver. That's why I say we need to support institutions like the new Free Speech Union, or like Reasoned UK, which I hope you subscribe to on both Facebook and YouTube. I'm going through your comments again. Christina says she stopped watching Jeremy Vine because he had too many Walklands on. She says she would... Oh, that's very kind. She says she would watch it if I was on it. Thank you very much, Pet. I don't watch the Vine show, so I can't comment on the Walklings. I did see the Lawrence Fox debate with Yasmin Alibi Brown, though. And that was good value, wasn't it? Well, Glynis asks what my views are on the Hartlepool by-election. There was a fantastic clip. I posted it on Twitter and Facebook from Michael Crick, who used to work for Channel 4. And he asks this bloke about the election, upcoming by-election. And the Labour candidate, by the way, is a massive Remainer who stood up for a so-called people's vote. I don't know what the first one was. We must have all been sheep voting. We were in 2016. But anyway, there's this candidate, and Michael Crick was going around asking people in Hartlepool. And this one bloke stood up, and he says, he's asked about his views on Boris Johnson, and he says, well, he thinks Boris Johnson's doing a better job than the other bloke would have. And Michael Crick says, do you mean Jeremy Corbyn? Well, what do you think about Sir Keir Starmer? And this bloke says, who? Quick as a flash, who? And anyway, I'm not making it sound funny, but it's funny. You should watch it. And I think that goes to the heart of Labour's problem in places like Hartlepool. People either don't know who Sir Keir Starmer is, they don't know who the Labour Party candidate is, or they do, and they don't like what he tried to do as far as democracy and our votes concerned. Sir Keir Starmer was the architect, let's not forget, of the Labour Party's second referendum campaign. A man who said, in a clip posted on Guido Fawkes, that it was ironic, I guess, I can't remember the exact language, that he was made a member of the Queen's Council because he supports the abolition of the monarchy. And I think after this week, folks, we've seen that the support for our monarch is incredibly high. So people won't have any truck with these sort of student union style politics being espoused by the leader of the opposition. I think the whole thing's cartoon and not a farce. So, you know, I don't know what the outcome will be. Who knows? Tories might get it, they might not. But I think it's clear, though, that as far as Sir Keir Starmer is concerned, many people have called his number. K-Rai on YouTube says, speak out loud and proud. The more of us who do this, the more we drown out the woke flakes. I think that's absolutely right. FH says, after everything you've been through, do you feel like you are uncancelable now? No, I don't feel like that. I'm always conscious, I'm always aware of the fact, alive to the fact, that at any point I could say something that sufficiently riled the Twitter reading classes. So much so that Twitter throws off, so much so that Facebook throws off, so much so that YouTube throws off, so much so that Instagram throws off. And where does that get you? You know, I make a living now out of video content and doing my daily uploads to the YouTube channel. And I would be, you know, it's like having your voice box removed. You're muted by big tech, censorship. So I don't think I'm uncancelable at all. What did I say there? Uncancelable. Can't say that. No, I don't. I really don't. Unfortunately, I am but human. Graham Brooks asked if I've been offered to work with GB News. I haven't applied for anything at GB News. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. For a reason to grow on that channel, we haven't even been launched a year yet, and we're at almost 75,000 subscribers on YouTube. That's fantastic growth. With about 6 million views. It's been phenomenal. And I want to keep that going, grow that channel and see what happens there. So I'm not looking to move away at the minute. But I am excited for GB News, by the way. I'm looking forward to seeing what they get up to. It's a mixed bag, isn't it, of presenters. There are some interesting ones for sure. James Stokes, that's an interesting question. He says, who from Labour's current crop would you prefer over Starmer? That's an interesting question. I keep saying that, don't I? You're on fire tonight. Actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to say non-MPs, but given how many were wiped out in the 2019 general election, I'll have a hard job picking one from the parliamentary party. But I think my favourite Labour person who is alive and the dead would be Peter Shaw, who gave a fantastic speech during the first referendum that we had on Europe in 1975 at the Oxford Union. You should Google Peter Shaw YouTube and you'll find it. He's phenomenal. And alive, though, would be Caroline Flint, the former MP for, I believe, Doncaster, is it North or South? And she's phenomenal. She stood up for that vote for Brexit. She said time and time again, the Labour Party are going to be absolutely trounced if you don't start respecting democracy. And she was right, wasn't she? Absolutely right. So, you know, whilst I've certainly voted, it's no surprise to many of you, I voted Conservative in 2019. But I was sad to see Caroline go, so I think Caroline Flint would be the leader that I would fear most if I were the Conservatives. I think she's a phenomenal person. So that's my answer, James. Kerry asks, why does the left see the BBC as a right-wing organisation? That's because, Kerry, anyone to the bloody right of Chairman Mao is seen as being right-wing these days. That's how far to the left, that's how out of touch the left in this country has become. I think that's the reason. Oh, Connor asks my thoughts on vaccine passports. This is a little bit controversial because I know a lot of you disagree with us on this, and that's fine. I don't mind disagreement. Hell, I welcome disagreement. I champion disagreement. I happen to be someone who is a very disagreeable person, depending on your political persuasion. But my view on the whole of the coronavirus lockdowns and all the rest of it is that we've lost our minds. I do think that, I'm afraid. And the reason for that is that I think in combating one disease, we've completely forgotten about all of the others. We've said to hell with all of the others. People with pre-existing mental health conditions, people with newly created mental health conditions thanks to the lockdown strategy, people with undiagnosed cancer, people with heart issues, you name it. There are a whole host of problems that we have created or exacerbated because of the lockdown strategy. But on vaccination passports in particular, I think, and I'm the first person, let's be clear, I'm the first person to criticise my woke millennial generation, the snowflakes as some people call them. And I absolutely am the first to criticise them. But when it comes to the last 12 months, I think young people have actually had to sacrifice quite a lot. My brother hasn't been able to go to university in his first year at university. He's just been having online contact stuff, and he's spending, £9,250 for that. He cannot socialise with people, and in my head, he's only a bairn. You know, he's 19 years of age. 18, 19, he's going to kill me for saying that. And my other brother found it really, really hard to find a new job. And all of these things aren't isolated cases. That's happened to young people up and down the country. Unemployment is highest among that demographic because of the lockdown strategy. And I think that's only going to get worse as soon as we turn off the spending taps. The job losses will just mount up. It'll be going ding, 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 ding. So the young people have sacrificed a lot, in my view. Some of you disagree with me on that, and that's absolutely fine. So I think to put forward vaccination passports that say that people like me can't do certain things, can't access certain parts of the economy, because we haven't yet been vaccinated, is discrimination. And I don't like the idea in this country of being asked to provide your papers to get about. But that's what it would be. And I think it sets a really dangerous and quite chilling precedent. Now, some of you might think that that's hyperbole, and you might think it's grandiose, verbose, whatever you want to call it. But I don't. I'm absolutely clear about that, actually. I'm really worried about it. And the fact that it's, Boris Johnson as Prime Minister that's pushing it through, someone that was always seen as being freedom-minded, I think is terrifying. Who is there standing up for freedom and liberty and common sense at the moment? I think we've lost our minds slightly, I don't mind saying. I'm really nervous about what precedent this sets. Let us know what you think anyway. Roy Hughes says, your shows are too short, Darren. I mean, I've been on a while here. I've been on 50 minutes here. Do you mean the clips I upload to YouTube? I could do longer I could do this sort of thing. And that's why I'm trying this out, right? I'm seeing what works. So let us know. Comment along, send us an email, do whatever you want to do. And let us know what you'd like to see. Do you want more long form things like this where we're just chatting? Do you want the small clips, more of those small clips explaining my views on the news? What do you want? Let us know. More interviews with people. Let us know in the comment section and I'll let you know. Oh, Litza says Kate Hoey is her favourite Labour person. Yes, Kate is fantastic. Baroness Hoey, no less now. A friend of mine. Love her lots. The English lady says, Peter Shaw, my hero. He is a hero. I struggle not to vote for him were he around today, I tell you that much. Christina's laughing at my Chairman Mao. They are, man. The left in this country is now quick to accuse anyone of being right-wing or extreme or whatever Islamophobia they fancy calling you this week if you are somewhere to the right of Chairman Mao. It's true. Litza again. I keep picking on you, Litza. But Litza says vaccination passports will be as temporary as income tax. And that's right. The income tax was supposed to be a temporary measure, I think, under the Napoleonic Wars, wasn't it? And of course, it's still around today. I think that's absolutely right. I think we will have to start showing our documents and our papers. And that scares me. I don't think it will be a temporary measure. People are already saying that we can never go back to the new normal. Well, I'm sorry, I want to go back to the new normal. I want to take off my face mask and see the smile of someone else. That it could be in a supermarket, it could be anywhere. Yeah, we had virtue signalling in the House of Commons this week by Labour Party politicians asking where the sign language interpreter was for the coronavirus press briefings. And that's the same party, that's the same politicians that have supported mask wearing in all of our shops. Now, if you are profoundly deaf, you rely upon lip reading. You know, if you want help, you rely upon being able to communicate with someone by watching how their lips move. You cannot do that if someone's got a mask on. So virtue signal away if you want about how deaf people have got it hard, but you cannot possibly argue that you are a champion of making life easier for deaf people and for raising deaf awareness when you support mask wearing. It makes life very difficult for deaf people. So I think there are many ways in which I'm absolutely desperate to get back to the new normal. I think we've got to put our foot down and say, no, we must reclaim every single one of our freedoms and liberties. We've vaccinated the vulnerable. We've protected the NHS. That's what the goalposts were. You cannot move them. You cannot say, oh, now the vaccines don't matter. People need hope. That's why people are losing their minds. Mental health crises and all the rest of it going through the roof. Because this government has forgotten that it needs to give people hope. So I feel quite strongly about this. Oh, Mitchell says, Darren Grimes, more of this, please. Mitchell Goldie is a counsellor, and he's a fantastic bloke, so that's very kind. I'd like to, someone says, no one on YouTube says, I'd like to see you do 20-minute videos. That's very specific. What do you want us to do in those 20-minute videos, so? And don't be dirty. And Christina says, as someone who doesn't want the vaccine, I could be locked in my home for life. Yeah, I think that's right. Why should you be? I don't think you should be discriminated against on health grounds for not having the vaccine should be your choice. But yes, by all means, we need to protect the vulnerable. But if the vulnerable turn around and say, well, I don't want that vaccine, well, ultimately, that should be their choice. What are we going to do? Walk around giving people mandatory vaccines? It's not what we're about. It's really icky stuff. I don't like it. Oh, Glynis says, I love this medium. I've got you propped up on my worktop whilst I make tea. But I also like your interviews. I like everything you do. That's very kind, Pet. I hope your tea's delicious. I'm sure you're quite the chef. I often do that, you know. I'll walk around with my phone just watching things. And my mum will be like, what is it you're listening to? At bloody full volume. It's probably, I don't know, Douglas Murray or Jordan Peterson at the minute. I'm also learning to drive at the minute, so I'm, trying to. So I'm watching a lot of theory videos. Yes, I'm 27 and I cannot drive yet. Leave us alone, okay? I'm taking this move out of London as an excuse to actually learn. So cut us some slack. Dan James says, I would watch the 20-minute videos as well. I'm not clear what you actually want in these 20-minute videos. You're going to have to tell us. I think a lot of you are very concerned about this lurch into authoritarianism. And that's, I think there is a real problem with that. I think we should be scared about all of that. Someone says, you have white wallpaper, how racist. Oh dear, is that me cancelled again? Someone says, is cheese racist? I've not heard that one. Interesting theory. I'll explore it in my next video. Oh, someone says, I love your accent. Who's that? Lynn Iverson. I love your accent and common sense. Thank you very much, Pet. I hope you're having a good night. Oh, Trisha makes a very, very important point. So Trisha says, you won't need to drive if the climate madness carries on. You'll need a bike. I know. And it won't be a petrol-powered bike either. It'll be a push bike. And it's because I think we haven't actually been, politicians haven't been honest with the public about the sheer cost of pursuing net zero by 2050. The Treasury were forced, I think it was the Treasury, or at least the Department for the Environment and Rural Affairs anyway, had to release the actual costings, government costings, Treasury costings, on how much net zero will cost. And you're talking £1 trillion. You're talking getting rid of every gas boiler out of a house and replacing it with hydrogen ones. And all of these absolutely nutty things that are going to bankrupt Britain. And all we're going to do is offset our carbon abroad. All we're going to do is send our jobs to China. All we're going to do is send our jobs to Russia. What for? So that China and Russia can burn coal and all the rest of it, and pump CO2 into the air without a care in the world. And people say, well, we need a global CO2 tax. All right, fine. I'll pay for your airfare to China. You can ask the Chinese to sign up to your global CO2 tax. See how far you get. Then you can protest. Let's get Extinction Rebellion out over there in Beijing. See how long they last on their protest out there. I think politicians need to be honest with people about the trade-offs that are involved. You like your car? I wouldn't get used to it. You like cheap food in supermarkets? I wouldn't get used to it. You like access to cheap energy? I wouldn't get used to it. You like going on holiday? I wouldn't get used to it. These are all things where politicians need to be absolutely honest about what the trade-offs would be as far as a pursuit of net zero by 2050 is concerned. Because right now, they're absolutely not being. That's my view on that. Thank you. Brilliant question. Paul's made us feel better because Paul says he's nearly 50 and he cannot drive. So don't worry about that. Well, that's made us feel better. Cheers, Paul. Mike's asked us about my view on Russia and America. It's an interesting one, actually. I haven't been following it that closely, admittedly, but from what I have seen, President Biden said, he'll expel a few people from... I think I've got this right. He said he will kick out 10 Russian officials and impose sanctions in retaliation for the SolarWinds hack. Now, I actually think that if that's all Biden's going to do, if that's the strength of Biden's response, then I'm afraid Ukraine will shortly cease to exist. I think there does need to be a stronger international response to what's going on right now. It's terrible what's happening. So I don't think Biden's been very strong at all. Oh, someone's asked, has Reasoned recruited their diversity officer yet? Hey, I'm gay and I'm working class. I tick 2 of your boxes already. Not your boxes, but I tick 2 of the left's boxes. That's why they hate us so much, man. Right, I'm going to answer one more question and then I'm going to sod off. Lee Johnson says, Darren, do you think the government are using lockdown restrictions to kickstart the green agenda? I don't know about that, but what I do know is that there have been members of the environmental movement who have said, well, look what lockdown's achieved. You say, well, what's that? Lockdown's achieved a reduction in CO2 emissions. Lockdown's achieved getting to stay indoors and not burn fuel and not go on holiday and not be excessive in what we're eating and all the rest of it outside, travelling to and from here and there. And they say this has been fantastic for the environment. Let's do it again. And you say, what? So all it took to reach your climate change ambitions is locking billions of people around the world inside their homes, fearing what we thought might have been, for many people, a fatal virus. That's what you want. Could there be any more an extreme and divisive agenda? That's why I am actually pretty sceptical, not about climate change, but sceptical about the tactics and the ambitions of the environmentalist movement. I think it's a very radical movement. It's certainly a Marxist movement. And I think it's a fundamentally opposed to freedom movement. That's my view on that. Thank you, Lee, for your question. Right, I'm going to head off now, but do let us know, comment along, and let us know what you think about this format. What do you want to see from the channel? Because next month, on May the 20th, it's a year since I launched Reasoned. So, thank you for continuing to support Reasoned. I might do another live stream on the 20th. Yes, on the 20th of May, but on the first anniversary of Reasoned. So that should be good. But let us know. Do you want a live format? Do you like a live format where you get to ask questions? Follow us on Instagram, because I sometimes do Q&As on there as well. And just let us know. Do you want more interviews? Do you want more clips on responding to the news and views? Let us know what you want, because I definitely want to bring you on board on whatever we do next. All right. Cheers, you lovely